going over graphing linear functions. These have to be in y equals mx plus b form. If you put these in y equals mx plus b form, you can use a function called trace on your calculator, and it pretty much spits out the answer for you. Okay? Remember that m is slope or rate of change, right? And b is the initial price, cost, start out, whatever. Or you can call it the intercept, the y-intercept to be specific. Okay, so that's just a little reminder, side note kind of thing. We're going to be using the y equals function on your calculator. That is on the top left-hand corner. It's right here. So click that button. We're going to put this into our calculators. The equation is 2x plus 7. So hit your y equals button, type in 2, and then there's this alphanumeric key that you can hit. You can press alpha, whatever letter you want, but we're just going to use this right here, that xt theta n. So we type in 2, we hit this button, it just puts in a variable. It's normally x, and then plus 7. Okay, everybody should be able to press graph now, and it should spit out a line. If it doesn't spit out a line, raise your hand, I'll come fix you. Anybody? Give me a second, I'll do that. Alright, so after we get that line to graph, you should all be able to see it. We're going to choose a few buttons just so that we can change our graph, the way it looks. So right now it's zoomed in to our extremes of -10 all the way to +10, and up to +10 and down to -10 on the y-axis. Okay, so we could change that in our window, or we could do a zoom. So if it says zoom, we go zoom, press Z standard. Okay, so that all that basically does is put all of our windows in the same thing. The standard is where your window is at -10, +10, and your y is at -10, +10. So we just reset our memory so it's the same as it was on the standard. But if it's ever way out of whack, you can hit zoom standard and it'll get you back into that. My favorite button to push, because it gets me where I need it to be, is zoom fit. Almost every time that one works. So if you can't see your graph after you press graph, try zoom fit and it'll get you pretty close. Okay? Alright. Next, we're going to learn how to trace that. So press graph if you're not already on it. There's just a button that says trace. It's right here on the top right, second one. Okay, so press trace, and then you can see on the bottom those are your coordinates. It says x, it says 7. If I press left or right, it jumps to different numbers along the line, and it follows the line exactly. If I have more than one line, I can press up and down to change lines, but I only have one right now, so it doesn't matter. If I want to find specifically where does it cross the y-axis, well, that's the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where x is equal to 0, so I type in 0 on my calculator by pressing literally the button 0 and enter, and it tells me it crosses the y-axis at 0, 7. That's a coordinate. If you move on to this, and your problem says maybe the equation stood for it's $2 per hour of rental plus an initial cost of $7 for a kayak. I don't know. So if we did that, they'd say, what is it going to cost after 3 hours of renting the kayak? So you hit trace 3, press enter, and it spits out an answer. The answer would be $13. Okay? So these could be a quick way to answer some problems without actually having to plug in and do that. Another way to look at this, if you didn't want to use the graph function, is to press second graph, which is actually table, and it shows all the points, both positive and negative. But for the sake of that graph, that rafting problem, that kayak problem, we don't have negative possibilities. You can't rent something for a negative hour, so we'd only focus on the positive side. But again, if I want to know how long it would take for 10 hours, that'd be $27. If I wanted to look at what it would cost for a full day, 24 hours, I would go down to 24. There it is, 55. Okay, so I can look at the table as well. So to find the y-intercept, that's easy. Type in the x equals 0, and that'll give you an answer for where the y-intercept is. So let's try another button. Hit your graph. Is anybody's different than what looks on my screen? Okay. Press your zoom button again. Then go into where it says z square. Okay. this will give you the most accurate picture of the graph. Okay, so the graph now appears to be a steeper incline because they kind of zoomed out. You can see that we went out a little bit on our graph. It seems to be more steep, but it is about the same. Okay, in reality, if you counted them, if you zoomed back in and counted them, your slope is exactly the same. There's no difference there. But it looks that way because we zoomed out and changed our dimensions a little bit. And again, you press trace and you can see farther one way or the other way. Okay, that's pretty much all it is. So let's get some practice with this. We're going to put in the equation y equals 3x plus 6. So go back to your y equals. You can either clear that out or just type over it, whatever you want to do. 3x plus 6. Oh, I put times in there. Plus, 3x plus 6. And then they ask us questions like, what is the y-intercept? So I want to find out what the y-intercept is. I can go graph, or I can go to my table. I'm going to use the graph. I can see it, so that works. My y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. I press trace. Y-intercept is where x is 0, so I type in 0, press enter, and the y-intercept is at 6. Okay, that one's fairly obvious because y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form, so it's fairly obvious. But maybe they'll ask you to find out certain points along the line. They want to know when x is 2. So we type in 2 in our trace function, press enter. X is 2 when y is 12. And that gives us our coordinate, 2, 12. Again, we could say, what about when it's 5? So we press 5. There you go. When x is 5, y is 21. So it's 5, 21. Okay, same concept goes for every single time you do this. Let's do one more equation just to get the practice in. Y equals negative. We have to make sure we put in the negative button. That's this one right here. Don't use a minus. Negative 5x plus 2. Okay. If you put in a minus, let me show you what it looks like. Okay, the minus sign is just a little bit longer. When I graph it, it'll give me an error. Okay, so if you get an error, chances are you messed up and put a minus where negative was supposed to be. Okay, so I graph my line. It is a negative slope, so you should see a negative slope. Okay, let's practice changing our zoom. Let's change it to the standard. It probably won't change a whole lot. Kind of looks like it's less steep now. Okay, go back, zoom square. This will give us the most accurate depiction of this. There you go. Looks a little more steep. Okay, if I said, what is y when x is 5? Find that for me. And tell me what you get. Negative 23. Okay, any questions on that stuff? It can make your life way easy if you use it properly.